Ready, Mr. Price? Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Gilbert Cedillo. I am chair of the Ad Hoc Committee on Immigrant Affairs. It is Wednesday, April 12th, 2017. We're here at approximately 4 p.m. in room 340 of Los Angeles City Hall. And I am joined by my colleagues. We have a quorum here with Mr. Kern Price and Mr. David Rue. We're also joined, special guest, the president of the council, Mr. Herb Wesson. So I'm very happy to be here. All of you, we have moved up and responded to the sense of urgency that people have about the committee. We're trying to do more meetings, and we've done that, and we continue to do that. We will continue to do that. Today is a very exciting day. But before we get to that, Mr. President, we have another item before us. I'm going to bring the item up first, and then we'll focus on the item that we're all here on. We have item number 2, and I'd like to invite up for a brief 5-minute presentation a report from the California Rising Collaborative. So can we hear from the spokespersons for the California Rising Collaborative for your brief but thorough and comprehensive 5-minute presentation? Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Councilman Cedillo. My name is Joseph Chicas. I am here with the Latino Coalition in California Rising. Very happy to be here and at this very important juncture in the history of our city and the history of our country. I currently teach policy and government at USC and at Cal State LA, and I'm also here as a Salvadorian who's a product of political refugees. I'm here speaking on behalf of our coalition, but also my family. So first and foremost, I want to thank the Council President Herb Wesson. In the aftermath of the election of our new administration, you went immediately into action. You led by listening. You convened folks, even on your birthday, convening a number of different immigrant groups to find out how we take corrective action, how we take proactive action in protecting our communities against the draconian policies that will come down from this administration. Councilman Cedillo, what can I say? You're a legend in this space. The work that you've done, the work that you led up and down the state, throughout the country, and now locally, has had far-reaching effect on the millions of lives of immigrant families that are currently being threatened under this administration. And your leadership is needed now more than ever. And thank you. We salute you.
Thank you.
With that being said, in the aftermath of the election, we went immediately into action, recognizing the importance that we needed to form a broader coalition. And out of that was born California Rising. We've went immediately into action, and my colleague Leo Chizan will report very briefly on what some of those actions have been.
As mentioned, my name is Leonardo Faria Chuzan. And since the last time we were here, it seems our world continues to change almost as fast as we refresh our timelines. It was during this committee's inaugural encounter where the Latino Coalition of Los Angeles PAC submitted our reports collected through our first set of Know Your Rights Town Hall across the city, which identified our community's most pertinent legislative and political concerns while recognizing the necessity of providing a cathartic platform for dialogue. It was during those forums, as much as during these committee meetings, that we came to understand the sensitive nature in having not just intergroup dialogue, but intragroup dialogue. It was also during those forums that we saw firsthand how fear led to frustration in our communities, a sentiment that continues to engulf our community members, considering the political climate we continue to work and live in. However, from sorrow comes great wisdom when appropriately and responsibly corralled. Those sentiments made way for a passionate reinvigoration of civic engagement by our constituents. Through our coalition's efforts, we demonstrated the necessity not only to change within institutionalized powers, but to hold ourselves and our elected officials accountable. As a result, California Rising was born, and through conversations with Speaker Anthony Rendon, Council President Herb Wesson, and Council District 1, we found ourselves here. I'm very proud to represent the Latino Coalition of Los Angeles as a former undocumented student, a proud product of LAUSD, and an even prouder survivor of Proposition 187. So with that being said, I would like to introduce my colleague, Sophia.
Thank you, Leo. Testing? Okay. Thank you, Leo. My name is Sofia Cortez, and I'm the director for SANA, the Salvadorian American National Association, and also part of the advisory board for the Latino PAC of Los Angeles. As mentioned by Leo, California Rising was the first response effort that took place to address the community's fears and concerns emanating from President Trump's attacks against our communities. Our collective efforts continue to look for more effective ways to deal with the unrefutable national political reality. We found out through our town halls experiences that we face really two challenges. One, the challenge to engage all of our diverse communities in the complexity of such diversity. And two, the urgent need to collectively but permanently defend our most vulnerable communities. The evolution of efforts carried on at various levels of government to address the challenges we face, this commission, for example, being a crucial one, and up to the latest statewide effort, SB 54, championed by Senator Kevin De Leon, are notable examples of principled leadership. But it is not enough, and it is not complete. We are missing the principal actor, our politically invisible and vulnerable communities engaged in leading their own civic empowerment process. A process only possible by facilitating the galvanization of the community's inherent ability to empower themselves, and the communities developing the ability to become civically stronger and more confident, especially in the controlling of their lives and claiming their rights. This is perhaps the most crucial civic time for our city and our state. Its importance and urgency comparable to the civil rights time movement. It is in this spirit that California Rising is evolving to become one of the efforts seeking to become inclusive, an inclusive civic empowered vehicle for our vulnerable communities. And our goals are to effectively conjugate the voices of our immigrant community into a successful and representative alliance that can impact, maximize the city, the county, state, legal, and socioeconomic efforts, and to efficiently develop a platform that facilitates our community's consistent, committed, and permanent civic engagement. The challenge we face is daunting, and the solutions cannot just come from leadership or enacted legislation. Our communities must take the lead. In closing, the war against our brothers and sisters, all California citizens, has been declared, and it will take an inclusive, bottom-up, top-down strategy led by both a transformational leadership and a civically empowered community to win it. Thank you. I'd like to give it back to Joseph now.
Thank you. And in closing, we appreciate the opportunity to speak before the committee. And we also appreciate the opportunity to have been invited to a meeting with our Assembly Speaker, Councilman Cedillo, and our Council President, Herb Wesson, which afforded us the opportunity to introduce, through California Rising, Mr. Peter Shea. And we're really happy to see Peter today, and excited about the prospect of him supporting efforts in the city to legislatively protect ourselves against the threats from this administration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Colleagues? Public comment, Patricia McAllister. I have someone from Human Rights Watch, and then
Yes, I'm Patricia McAllister, and I am against
Jason.
this entire committee. I don't think we have a right to do this, and I know that our elected officials who are here in this entire city council with the mayor and the governor are in violation of the law and probably will be arrested soon. Attorney General Sessions said this week, the other day, that for federal attorneys, he wants the federal attorneys to consider prosecution of anyone who harbors undocumented immigrants, which are illegal aliens. So quit using the word immigrants. We have millions of legal immigrants. We're talking about illegal aliens, okay? With a priority given to violent cases or those that involve transporting or shielding 3 or more undocumented illegal aliens. Mr. Sessions also instructed the Justice Department to pursue felony charges, okay? So you guys are getting set up to go to prison, and I want to be there when they lock you up.
I have someone from Human Rights Watch.
Hi, my name is Sujana. I want to address the idea of Los Angeles being a sanctuary city. That has been said, that word has been used a lot. We are not a sanctuary city. How can we be when a father can't even drop off his daughter at school without being carted away by ICE agents? How can it be when landlords are able to use deportation as a threat to harass and intimidate their tenants? What we need right now is strong leadership backed up by strong actions. We need the mayor's executive directive backed up by a city ordinance, an ordinance that is comprehensive and puts into place policies that will protect and defend our communities, an ordinance that's more than just empty words. There are cities out there that are doing more than just talk, cities like Seattle and closer to home, Santa Ana. We can use those as examples. But truthfully, we should not be following, we should be leading the way. LA is supposed to be a leader in standing up for the immigrant community, and I hope that one day soon it will be again. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Schauderwald. And then Mylene Carberry.
Hi, my name is Jason Shadwald. I'm here with the Sanctuary Now folks. By the way, Councilman Cedillo, congratulations on your endorsement by Our Revolution. I'm also one of the Bernie delegates who was elected to the Democratic State Party.
Thank you. Congratulations.
No, thank you. I'm here also to speak in favor of Los Angeles becoming a sanctuary city. Our immigrant community, both legal and yet to be legal, those seeking asylum deserve our full support. They are wonderful contributors to our society, to our economy. They should all be welcome. They should all be made to feel safe. And in fact, as long as they do feel safe, they're more likely to cooperate with our law enforcement and with other city and state and county and every level of government in keeping us safe and informing the police and just generally contributing the way that we would expect any other citizen to contribute. And I think they deserve our full support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mylene Carberry. I am totally for Sanctuary City, and I do think, though, that we do need strong ordinances to bring this directive into implementation. I mean, we waited a long time for the directive. The name Sanctuary City came up at the airport, but there was nothing to back it up. Finally, the directive comes, and it's incredible, but there's no teeth, there's nothing behind it to make it happen, to put it into process. We need that. We don't want empty words. I don't want to see a visual thing on the news, but we have nothing to back it. This city is an extraordinary city, and we're extraordinarily diverse, and we need to be safe for our citizens and our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that is concludes item 2. Now yes, sir. You want to announce?
I'm ready when you are, sir.
Ready when you are. You going to announce?
Item number 1,
Yes.
Chief Legislative Analyst Report relative to the appointment of an immigrant advocate.
Yes, Mr. President, I want to acknowledge, as the previous committee did, your incredible leadership. You have really stepped up without any pause or hesitation since the changes that took place in Washington have occurred. As insane and as irrational and as thoughtless as the president and his administration has been, particularly in this matter of immigration, you have been the opposite. You have been thoughtful, you have been considerate, you have been reasoned, and you have brought us together to take advantage of the both the policy experiences of this council and its experiences in this particular subject matter for us to move forward on this. And in your wisdom, you have also recognized that there are people who work on this day in and day out for year in, year out, decade after decade, who bring an expertise to this body, and you have been thoughtful enough to bring that person to our committee to serve as our advocate. And with that, I'd like to turn the mic over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think if we could ask Mr. Shea to come to the center table. Let me just again thank the chairperson of this committee, Gilbert Cedillo, for allowing me to say a few words before you actually get into the meat and the potatoes of this issue. This committee was created to protect our way of life in Los Angeles. Those of you on this committee were selected because I know how you feel and how you think, and I know how big your hearts are. That's why you are on this committee. I know how creative you are. But I stand before you today just to share was last week, and contrary to what some of our public speakers may have said or think, last week I was at lunch, Mr. Chairman and members, and a colleague of ours who will remain nameless comes to me and she says, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for standing up for my people. And I have to admit, for a moment, I felt proud. But before I walked away, I turned to her and I said, well, no, you're wrong. I'm standing up for our people, okay? I believe that we are all one race. And that is, Sergeant, one more, where are you? One more heckle and she can be gone. So you can, in fact, she can, last warning, when you set up and spouted all of your hate, we set up and not one person made a sound. So now you're either gonna sit down and shut up or listen. No, Sergeant, she can leave. No, you're gonna leave right now because you're disrupting this meeting. No, you're disrupting the meeting. Sergeants, then you can get arrested. You are going to leave. You are going to show respect, just like everybody showed respect for you. No, then she's ejected. She's ejected. So if Mr. Chairman, if we can recess.
To be disruptive.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you going to sit down? Are you going to sit down and shut up? Are you going to sit down and shut up and not disrupt this meeting? Now what you're going to do, if she remains quiet, then she can stay. One more hiccup, one more whatever, she is out. This is an important issue for the majority of the people that are here today. And the point that I was trying to make, those of us that are enlightened believe that we are part of one race. That is LA. If we could all have X-ray vision and we looked into the bodies of each and every one of us, what you would see would be identical. One race. We in Los Angeles judge people based on their deeds and their actions, and not on the color of the skin, not religion, not what religion they practice, not who they sleep with. We judge people based on their deeds and their actions. We are Los Angeles. When we look out into a crowd and that crowd is not diverse, we believe that something is wrong. That's who we are. And I think as Los Angeles, we have a responsibility to stand up and show the rest of this nation that we know how to protect the residents of this city. And if we do a good job, then other cities will follow our lead because the winds in this country blow from the west to the east, and the rest of the United States is looking at us. And I say to you that this struggle that we are in now, Mr. Chairman, is a struggle for the survival of this great nation that each and every one of us love. But I think that it is time for us to make sure that people understand that we are not against the most powerful man in this country. It's important that people realize that we are for protecting the most vulnerable people in this country. And that's LA, and that's what we're all about. Now, those of you have known me for a long time, and you know the one thing that I don't do often, and the one thing that I hate is to lose. I don't want to lose on this critical battle where it relates to us protecting the residents of this city. This immigration conversation is supposed to keep us safe. I say that it's having the exact opposite effect. Someone got up during public comment and talked about landlords being able to prey on their tenants because tenants would be afraid to report landlords, because then landlords could report them. There are individuals out there that are starting cottage industries, ripping people off. Give me $1,000 and I will take care of your immigration problems. And then you never see that person again. Individuals that are hiring folk to do a job, you fix that for me, you get $200. You fix it, you come for your $200, they give you $150, you complain, they say they're gonna report you. So in my view, this has the adverse effect. Now, I support those that are here today talking about sanctuary cities. I get that. I don't think it would be my priority. I support those that believe that it's important to do optical things and symbolic things. I support that. But I think as the city of Los Angeles that we need to be smart, calculated, sometimes cold, and come up with a strategy that protects this city that we love and the people that we love. It is time for us to organize a plan of action that is real, a plan of action that people can touch, a plan of action that people could feel. And that's why I came here myself to recommend that we bring aboard the individual that I believe without pause is the best person to be the quarterback of the city council's strategy to protect the people and the city that we love. And that's in Mr. Peter Shea. I think that we probably have one of the best city attorneys that we've had in a while. So I would not want anybody to think that I am suggesting that Mr. Shea replace Mike Feuer. He is the best, and the people of Los Angeles are blessed to have him. I respect the mayor, and the mayor has taken leadership on this issue as well. Mr. Shea does not compete with the mayor's office on immigration. Mr. Shea will help the council and work with and interface with the city attorney's office, the mayor's office, and with every member of this council. I believe that the president is trying to bleach America. That's what I believe. I also believe that our civil rights are in jeopardy as well. I also believe that there are changes that have occurred in the Justice Department to protect people, regardless of what you look like, regardless of your race, regardless of your sexual orientation. I think all of that is at risk. So it is important, in my view, that we bring aboard somebody that has the credentials to help the city of Los Angeles put forth a comprehensive plan that protects the people that we care so much about. I also think that it's smart that we diversify our protection plans for this city, because what a lot of people don't realize that over 50% of the people that are in this country that don't have their legal status, they are not Latinos. They are not Muslims. The face of immigrants are just like each and every one of us in this room. You have immigrants from Africa, immigrants from England. So I think it's important for us to lead the way and to build a large and broad coalition where we have representatives from everyone. And the last thing that I think that we should do is send a message to all that if you want to put the target on the backs of our immigrant community, then you might as well put that target on my back too, because I stand with them. And I think that that's the message that we in Los Angeles have to send loud and clear. But let's do it with clarity. Let's do it with intelligence. Let's do it with a plan. And let's do it led by the individual that I believe is by far the most qualified person to do this. So members, I highly urge you to vote unanimously to bring Mr. Shea on as this city's immigrant/civil rights advocate. And also, as I sit down, as I close, I would ask you, without my introducing a motion, to amend the name of the committee to be Immigration and Civil Rights, because they are all locked in together. And I also believe that that helps us get the diversity that we need. We have a responsibility to lead the way. Let's lead it. This fight is not just to save Los Angeles. In my view, it is a fight to save the greatest country on the planet. That's the United States of America. I ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. You're out of order. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, let's hear from a man that I've only known for 43 years. I've worked with him in many various struggles around the question of immigration in the 70s and the 80s. A man who helped us settle the Proposition 187. A man who I've worked with on the driver's license and many other issues like the California Dream Act. One of the most preeminent voices on the question of immigration, Mr. Peter Shea. Welcome you to the committee.
Thank you very much. Do I need to press this button?
No.
It's fine?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to extend a deep gratitude to the President of the City Council, a person who has displayed extraordinary vision and leadership during very difficult times in terms of policies and practices coming out of Washington, D.C., largely in the nature of executive orders, which I think is fairly clear, many of which have not been well thought out, have resulted in somewhat immediate chaos, and several of which, challenged in the federal courts, have been blocked in the federal courts because they contained provisions that were illegal or unconstitutional. When And I also, of course, want to express deep gratitude to Gil Cedillo and to the other members of this ad hoc committee who are somehow dedicated to dealing with the extraordinary situation. Really the first time I can remember in whatever it's been, about 40 years of engagement in human rights work, civil rights work, immigrants' rights work, indigenous peoples' rights work. I cannot really think of another time in which executive orders have been issued in such a flurry that had the potential to harm local communities in terms of their safety and in terms of their health and in terms of their diversity and in terms of the camaraderie among different parts of the community, different communities within cities, counties, and states. I've really never seen a period in which executive orders have come down that have the potential to adversely affect health and safety of local communities the way these executive orders do. And it's sort of, it took me aback a bit and was somewhat surprising because in discussing the situation with probably 250 community stakeholders, including business owners and including some law enforcement folks and certainly including community-based organizations and NGOs and faith-based leaders and unions. Over the past few months, as these Trump orders came out, especially the Trump orders that focus on domestic enforcement that were issued around January the 25th, it became clear in discussing this with people, all those folks, that this was not a battle that could be led by national organizations based in the Beltway of Washington, D.C. That this was an issue that had to be led at a local level. In all practical terms, the idea of federal comprehensive immigration reform is clearly off the table. And any sort of, unfortunately, I don't say this with any joy, but any remedial action, positive action in the nature, short of legislation, in the nature of rule changes, policy changes, Department of Homeland Security changes, ICE changes, etc., are really off the table. And we have to be realistic about that, and we have to reach the understanding that that's 3 or 4 years off. Maybe in 4 years one can turn back to that federal stage. But for now, that doesn't mean standing still, and it certainly does not mean moving backwards. For now, for the next 2-3 years, is a prime opportunity for local communities and for states to step up to the plate and to say, what can we do? What can we do to have some sort of comprehensive approach, not just to immigrant protection, but to protection for all vulnerable communities? And when you do approach the question of protection for immigrants, you're probably not going to have to limit that. You're going to, instead of limiting it, you're going to want to expand protections for insular, vulnerable minorities so that they all have the same protections. We're not looking to, and I'm not terribly interested in raising the bar for one sector of the community while it goes down for the other sector. I think when you have a significant part of the population, as Los Angeles does, an immigrant population, if the bar gets lowered for them, thanks to these Trump initiatives, the bar gets lowered for everybody. It really is, in our younger days, we were on sports teams or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, and they always said, one for all for one. That is really, really true of today's situation. We simply cannot allow a significant part of the population, as a result of these executive orders, to have their housing standards drop significantly, to suffer additional exploitation at the hands of unscrupulous employers and sweatshop owners, or to not have access to cooperation with law enforcement, or not have access to health care when needed before things turn into emergencies, or somebody has communicable diseases but they're afraid to go to the hospital. Why do I think that these Trump initiatives would lower the safety and the health of cities like Los Angeles, while the president says it's going to make us all more safe? I think his immigration policies that he claims would make those cities more safe and make the populations healthier, I think they're fake immigration policies. They're not real. They're not based on anything empirical. They're not based on what migration experts think about the subject. They're not based upon any sort of personal observations of stakeholders who've worked with this population. It is perfectly clear, I think, to most of us, that when somebody kicks off their presidential campaign and the very, very first thing they say at their very first press conference is that, in essence, we are being overrun by rapists and serious criminals from Mexico, you know everything's going downhill from there. You know that person is not running for office on a program of diversity, of integration, of protection of human rights. That person is running for office based on divisiveness and based on nurturing racism, nurturing xenophobia, realizing that's a hot-button issue, and we can win if we pursue this hot-button issue. But does it make good public policy? Absolutely not. It makes terrible public policy. Why do I think that? What would, as a practical matter, what would happen? What we already see is a confluence of two factors. On the one hand, there is absolutely no doubt that these policies, announcements, we're going to arrest and deport 10 million people. We're going to fund another 150,000 detention beds. We're going to hire another 10,000 ICE officers to arrest and detain and deport people. There is no question that long before the migra is seen marching down your block, fear sets in. Fear sets in. And when fear sets in, people become far more exploitable. They become far more vulnerable to exploitation, whoever it's by. Could be by a neighbor, could be by a spouse that's unhappy with their spouse, threatening to report them. It could be by an employer, an unscrupulous employer. Somebody's willing to play on the edge of the rules. Somebody's willing to go over the edge of the rules when they think they can get away with it. And there are plenty of those. That's certainly not the majority of business owners, but those bad apples exist. And when that fear increases, the vulnerability to that type of exploitation, which is not always illegal, but it's mostly illegal and it's always unscrupulous, the opportunity for that exploitation increases. And on the other side, those unscrupulous employers, those employers who would tend to play at the margins of labor law, health and safety laws, wage and hour laws, or go over the edge, those landlords who would do the same thing, they feel emboldened because the president has demonized this population. The president has compared them to a mass of criminals. So their sense that, gee, just like that not-so-latent racist, these policies have permitted the worst tendencies to come to the surface. So when you have a confluence of the worst tendencies coming to the surface on the part of those who are willing to trade at the edge of the laws or even overstep the laws, whether they're county ordinances, city ordinances, or state laws or federal laws, When you have that confluence, the standards go down. There's no question. Wages will go down, working conditions will go down, health and safety will go down, conditions in housing will go down, and anyone who thinks that that is only going to impact this one small, well, not so small segment of the community, and we're going to be safe, forget it. You might be safe if you're in Pacific Palisades. You'd be relatively safe. You might be relatively safe if you're well protected, well insulated, well off. But for anybody in the middle, and certainly for anybody at the margins, and for anybody who's in vulnerable communities, the bar is going to be lowered for everybody. So how to address this? I think what I have discussed with Gil Cedillo and with the president of the city council are 2 or 3 ideas that are just in an early stage of thinking that I think are worth pursuing in cooperation with the city attorney's office, in cooperation with the Immigrant Affairs Office of Los Angeles, possibly in collaboration with folks at the county and the state of California. But what are those 3 things? In brief, number 1, as was suggested by a couple of the speakers, 3 of the speakers earlier, I think this is an excellent opportunity. We, as I put in a little report that I prepared for you, our view should be we're going to take lemons and turn them into lemonade. We're going to take a bad situation, and we're not going to just hold the line, make sure things don't go downhill in LA. Let's use a bad situation as an opportunity to raise the bar of safety, and to raise the bar of good health, and to raise the bar of diversity, and to raise the bar of inter-community dialogues and discussions and empathy and understanding. That's what makes Los Angeles great. And let's use this opportunity, not just walk away from it, not just say, let's do a little bit to make sure the bar doesn't drop too much. Forget it. Let's try to raise the bar a little bit. That'd be the best response to these rather hateful and divisive sort of policies coming in the nature of executive orders, not even from the Congress, just an executive order. So how would one do that? I think the first thing one could do, and it would take us 30, 60 days to come up with proposals. Those proposals will have to have input from businesses, from community-based groups, from faith-based folks, from everybody, from the city attorney's office, mayors, Immigrant Affairs Office, a wide range of input, but to come up with a comprehensive sort of set of immigration civil rights ordinances, LA style. You know, to say, you know what, federal government, you go for your own direction. We're not with you, but yours is a fake direction. It's not based on empirical data. When I met with the president briefly, he said 3 things to me, all of which resonated, and all of which made me think he was a president I could work with. And he said 3 things. There were about 45 people at this meeting. I was just one of them. And he said, number 1, any policy that we adopt or any actions that we take have to be based on facts, not on passion. And I totally agree with that. What's coming out of Washington, D.C. is based on passion, not on facts. We have to base any ideas that we come up with for ordinances, amendments to ordinances, to have a comprehensive sort of protection. We have to base it on facts, on empirical facts. Number 2, he said, and I think he reiterated this today, that anything we do has to recognize that Los Angeles is a rainbow. There are Polish Americans here, there are Italian Americans here, there are Haitians here, there are people from Central America. Any street corner, any school ground, any park, you will hear a wide range of languages being spoken. We need to include a wide range of people in this discussion, including citizens, including lawful permanent residents, including everybody. So I totally agree with that approach. This cannot be done as some narrow, sectarian effort. It's one for all for one. You lower the bar for 30% of your community, it's going to be lowered for everybody. And the third thing he said, which resonated with me as particularly as a long-time litigator, you really don't want to take on a major struggle that you cannot win. There's no point. Then you've wasted your time, you've set your goals too high, you've been unrealistic in your goals. So your goals have to be achievable, and you have to have a close to 100% assurance of success. Each one of those three things resonated with me, and I think can all be put into the process of developing proposals. That's all we would be doing, with the help of all those folks I mentioned, is really just coming up with proposals for the City Council to consider. But I think those proposals have to be based on fact. I think they have to be widely inclusive, and they have to be achievable. The second program, I think, is for us to advise you as members of the City Council in what is really ground zero on the immigration issue, whether or not there's any role that you can play in participating in, joining, or leading litigation against one or the other part of the Trump initiatives. Not the whole Trump initiatives. They're parts that look perfectly legal. We may not like them, may find them distasteful, may think they're not great public policy, but they appear to be legal and constitutional. But there are other parts that appear to be illegal and unconstitutional that could potentially affect tens of thousands of people in Los Angeles. And so again, our task would not be to make the decisions. That's your role. But our task can be to prepare careful, thoughtful, realistic, well-researched, with the help of a wide range of people, including law firms who I think will participate pro bono, to provide you with a realistic assessment of, do you wish to play a role in litigation or not? And I think the third area that we could be helpful is trying to determine what exactly, forget about the ordinances, the comprehensive ordinances, forget about the litigation that could be done, but to think about what services could we provide. What are our departments doing on this whole issue? And not just what services can we provide to the undocumented community. There are services that you could provide to employers, both to tell them what are their rights under this new regime coming out of Washington, D.C. If ICE comes to the door of an employer, what are they supposed to do? They let them in, not let them in, under what circumstances? If an employer wants to protect his or her workers, can they do that? How far can they do that without getting close to being in violation of the law? So the nature of, I think, the information services that the city can provide would go far beyond just the immigrant community. I also think that it could also go out to landlords, for example. But the city can be a hub of information. I also think the city can play a crucial role, and I know the president has initiated things along this line through Embrace LA program. Dialogue. We're only where we are today because of a lack of dialogue. If there was more dialogue, more community education, more community understanding of the challenges faced by different communities. And as the president said, we're all one people. We're all one people. And if that notion can build up through dialogue among the city, so that there's understanding, a much, much closer understanding that what we're doing for everyone. We're not doing it for one particular segment, maybe vulnerable tomorrow. Next day is going to be a different segment that would be vulnerable. So the third leg of what I see is services, information sharing. I don't know if the city will ever be in a position to provide funding to some local service providers, then to try to come up with some ideas about where would that go, what would that funding be for,
Or are there other ways, through provision of technical support, training, assistance, that the city can be helpful to service providers? And the only point I made to Gil Cedillo and to the president when I briefly discussed these ideas with them was that if the city does get involved, and I hope if the county gets involved and if the state gets involved in sort of this information services and facilitating the delivery of services, I hope that their efforts go more into what I would call offensive than defensive work. I've heard some say, oh, we should take all of our resources and put them into deportation defense in detention centers. I think that's a defeatist approach. I would much rather put my efforts into ensuring that no arrests without probable cause take place, that no illegal arrests take place, that no arrests take place just because somebody was not white-skinned, that if you prevent mass arrests, you never have to get to the problem of detention and deportation. It's a much more prophylactic approach that I would at least consider. So those are sort of the three legs. Groups like California Rising have played a critical role up to now. So have many, many other groups. Churla here in Los Angeles, Caressen, El Rescate, the Hermandad Mexicana Nacionals, all 5 offices that they have, the labor organizations on all sides. You know, labor, all these groups have their splits, but on all sides, there is now a common sense that it is time to work together, that it is time to work on a common vision, and a real understanding, something I really haven't seen before, an understanding among those stakeholders that it's a time for the city itself to play a leadership role. And so that's sort of the background, the viewpoint, the philosophy that I would bring to this task. I'm honored to undertake it. I think the family that makes up the city council, the mayor's office, the staff, the employees of the city of Los Angeles is an incredibly diverse and forward-looking and, by and large, humanistic family. And I truly look forward to working with that family to make Los Angeles a place that is safer than it was before, healthier than it was before, where there's a deep appreciation of its diversity and of the tremendous and beautiful values that come about because of that diversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, I want to bring up, if you have questions, but I thought I'd bring up public comment first, and then we could have a dialogue with the advocate. Does that sound? Patricia McAllister.
Mr. Shea is Jewish. His family were in the Holocaust. He lived in South Africa. His first case was a case to get a Mexican woman health care and let her child be born here. So he's been in this field a long time. You paying him $1 because you know if you put a city official in it, they're going to prison to do what he's doing. I say he's not going to win this time because this is a national problem. President Trump said we have 96 million unemployed Americans. And for a black man right over here to say we are all one color, go on Skid Row and see what's down there. You see black people down there. Until you Negroes stand up for your people, you'll never have anything good happen to your life. For you to be in here to advocate for illegal aliens, you're talking about 1.3 million illegals in Los Angeles. We've got about 2.5 million illegals. They've driven out all the black people just about, and all other people are moving out of here because they're taking over. So Herb Wesson, you are a disgrace to the black community, and I will never give you any respect.
Samuel Chu.
Thanks, you,
Welcome.
Councilmember, and thank you, Peter. I just want to voice, I think, the corrosive nature of not just the big policies, but the day-to-day experience. I have the opportunity to work with churches, with schools. One incident of ICE enforcement, legal or not, in broad daylight and public views, corrode the kind of trust that law enforcement, city agencies, and communities depend on for public safety all across the city. I want to particularly make the point that I've known Peter for a while. I commend and celebrate this decision from the council to invest in this particular endeavor and creating this particular project. I also want to implore on the council to give the power to this particular position so that it doesn't become another symbolic press conference, that it's not another talking point, but make real changes.
Thank you. Meth Sony. And then I have Graciela Lopez, Tessie Borden.
Good afternoon. My name is Meet Soni, and I'm a directing attorney at the Immigrant Defenders Law Center in Los Angeles. I represent individuals deemed mentally incompetent to represent themselves. All my clients are detained at the Adelanto Detention Facility, which is located 2 hours away. This is the same facility where recently a detainee committed suicide. Despite the fact that my clients are detained, I think they consider themselves the lucky ones because they have representation. They have me to make sure that they are not unlawfully deported, that their families know where they are and what condition that they're in, and that they have a meaningful chance to represent themselves against the government. Without representation, deportation proceedings in our country are fundamentally unfair. Over 70% of detained immigrants are forced to represent themselves against the government who is always represented. Under these circumstances, many people have no choice but to accept deportation. What this means for us as a city is that parents and breadwinners are permanently taken away from their children and their families, and our immigration system becomes the reason for tearing families apart and for causing widespread instability and insecurity. Councilmember Wesson is right to say that it is our responsibility to lead the state in how we protect our communities. We must lead by guaranteeing due process, just like New York City did for New York State. I therefore want to thank the committee for endorsing the city's contributions for the LA Justice Fund based on the CEO's report. We urge the City Council to endorse the CEO's report's recommendations urgently and to engage the county to ensure that we don't endorse the standard of due process less than
You
the
have
cities.
exceeded this.
Thank you so much.
Quite abusively almost. Graciela Lopez, please. No Graciela Lopez. Tessie Borden.
Hi, good afternoon, council member. Good afternoon to the committee. I want to first thank you for setting this committee meeting and for the responsiveness of your staff who met with us on Monday about the Sanctuary City Ordinance. We look forward to seeing either proposed language or at least an agenda item to discuss this language at the next meeting. We reiterate that we support something that resembles the Santa Ana Ordinance, which has been called the gold standard. I would also like to comment on the selection of the legal advisor. I'm concerned about the selection process, which seems opaque. As late as Monday, we were told there was still work to do on this. We expected a posting or a more public process, and here we are on Wednesday with a pick. We thought maybe the position would be a staffer, but now it appears it is a consulting position. I'm concerned about the transparency of the process. We hoped at least that the Universal Representation Coalition would be consulted, and it wasn't. Please make this a transparent committee. People care very much about what it is doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela McMillan.
Good afternoon. I would like to make sure that it is very clear here today, Mr. Wesson, Mr. Price, Mr. Cedello, Rue. I personally came from Skid Row. So let it be clear. I don't let anybody else speak for me. I am a proud black woman, but I'm not too proud to say that I came from nothing, and when the system thought that I could not rise up, when they took my house, my home, my children, because they misunderstood a lazy man who I called my ex-husband, husband at the time, was able to take my life and turn it upside down. I didn't go and complain to everybody else. I took it, took responsibility, and I rose above what the system said I could not do. So I want to thank all the black men out there very much for loving up on me, for making me stronger today for who I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott Doyle.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Doyle. I live in Highland Park. There's been a lot of talk tonight about Los Angeles leading the way, and sadly that ship has sailed already. Los Angeles is not leading, it is trailing, and it is trailing badly. No, there is no set legal definition for sanctuary city, but amongst those who are closest to the issue, there is a common sense public policy consensus about what that term means. It means, one, an ordinance making a clear separation between law enforcement and immigration enforcement, and two, a publicly funded defense fund ensuring due process for those facing deportation. And on both counts, I'm sad to say Los Angeles is trailing badly. We are 3 years behind New York City on the universal representation, and we are 3 months behind Santa Ana, which moved into action 4 days before the inauguration, before this committee had ever met. Lastly, per conversation with a member of your staff, Debbie Kim, I have copies of the Santa Ana ordinance to submit and an op-ed from the New York Times praising it as the gold standard for such ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Emmy McLean.
I'm with the National Day Laborer Organizing Network. Thank you for having this hearing. I couldn't agree more with Council President Wesson that we find ourselves in a struggle for this nation and that we all need to be stepping up in ways that we haven't stepped up before. To protect the most vulnerable, we urge the city to take important steps on behalf of this diverse immigrant community. Here in LA, the LAPD has already reported that domestic violence and sexual assault reporting has decreased markedly from Latinos subsequent to the election of Donald Trump. Houston Police Department just yesterday reported the same. Contrary to the statements of Jeff Sessions, studies have shown that sanctuary cities actually make us safer. And contrary to the threats of then candidate Donald Trump, the Supreme Court has shown that the federal government cannot punish cities for refusing to do the federal government's dirty work. So we urge the City Council to act now, or act yesterday, to do a number of things. One, ensure a strong and inclusive LA Justice Fund that can grow and ensure due process protections for all detained immigrants. And we celebrated the endorsement of the fund unanimously by the City Council. Two, and there's only three, bear with me, modernize local policing policies so that this city truly embraces bias-free policing. LAPD action should not result in deportations, as still happens now. I know because I represent people who have been placed in deportation proceedings as a result of LAPD actions. And three, ensure that the policies enshrined in Executive Directive 20 are established in a binding ordinance and implemented. LA should really be leading the way, and I also have materials, including suggested ordinance language that could be embraced in response to the recommendations that were presented today.
Thank you. Who do they go to? Colleagues, Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Shea, for your insights and your presentation. It was a great. I love what you presented in advance. Your draft of the Los Angeles City and California State's response to Trump. I mean, even before hearing you today, just your resume alone, you're founder of Center for Human Rights, El Rescate, CHIRLA, which when I was in my younger advocacy days, worked very closely with. So, I mean, you are already more than qualified and a champion for everything we're trying to do here. But everything you said, I echo, and I love what you said, especially, and I think it's reflective in we as a nation can do. Other people have said, how could this happen? But this is an opportunity to show increase empathy, understanding, and raise the bar for civil rights and human rights. I think this is an opportunity for America to show how strong our democracy is and how we are a nation of immigrants, for us to go back to our roots. So I'm very excited at that. And I love your logic of you want everything to be based on fact. That you want a coordinated approach with coordination building. It's not just about one group. This isn't about Latinos. This isn't about just immigrants. And I love our council president's recommendation to include civil rights, because this is about civil rights. This is about human rights. This is about basic rights. And, about your thoughts on litigation that needs to be winnable. There are so many things that I agree with on your presentation, and I look forward to. And you wrote here that this was pretty extensive, but you said this is just a brief synopsis, and it'll take you another 3 months or a little bit more time to flush it out, and I look forward to seeing that. And but I think there's things that we need to do immediately, and I know my colleagues. Councilmember Nuri Martinez and Jose Huizar isn't here today because we have a special meeting because I think it was last week, we talked about how important this was, and we need to move forward, and especially hiring an advocate for our committee. And that's why we're holding this special meeting, and I know they would be very excited to have heard what you said. And I remember at the last meeting, we even introduced a motion about fraud that's happening in our own communities. And I think there's things we could do immediately. It's not just about defining or stating sanctuary city, but it's actually acting. And like many of the things you mentioned, we need to give reassurances to our communities, to all communities, that we will protect. We are, I believe, one of the only jurisdictions that has a justice fund. So I'm very excited about all these things, but what we could do immediately as a city council to address all those who are taking advantage of people in our communities, all the fraud, whether it's someone pretending to be a paralegal or some sort of immigration advocate, or whether it's someone who is an actual immigration attorney just taking advantage, period, as well as reassuring our communities to make sure that the police works for you. And there's already underreporting. There's already so much fear going on. And I've spoken to several consul generals that live in my district, and they pretty much spend all their weekends just going out to the various communities, assuring them everything's going to be safe. So there is well-founded fears that we need to address. So I'm going to turn it over to the rest of my colleagues, because obviously I'm just very excited about you coming on board. There's so much things that need to be done. I think Council President, when Council President first thought of this committee and asked me if I wanted to serve on it, he actually spoke about civil rights. So I don't know where in the process the civil rights got dropped off, but I think that's something we should definitely put back in, because it's not just about immigration, it's about justice for all.
Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too just want to say how proud I am of this moment in our city's life. Hats off to our president, who had the vision, the leadership to create this council, this committee. I'm honored to be serving on it with my colleagues who certainly have distinguished themselves and been strong proponents of not just immigrant rights, but human rights, and just doing the right thing. And Mr. Shea, really excited about your presence and your willingness to step up and serve. Your reputation certainly speaks for itself, and I'm going to be very pleased to support your appointment when it comes before the council. Issues around immigrant rights are certainly critical at this time, certainly throughout our city, all parts of the city. In my district, I've got a high population of immigrants from all over, not just the Latin American diaspora, but from Asia, from Africa as well. And so I'm very keenly interested and concerned about the well-being and the safety of all citizens, especially those who are immigrants to this country. It's unfair to tear families apart, literally tear them apart. And we all have heard of instances where that has occurred when ICE shows up at unusual times in unpredictable ways. You know, in council, in our district office, we get calls. There might be a street cone in the street for some street repair, and people get spooked out. They think it's an ICE roadblock, and they're asking questions. They're afraid to go down that street. Parents sometimes are afraid to take their kids to the park because they might get picked up or going to the store. And so these issues are real, and we have to do all we can to leverage resources in ways that we haven't before. I think it's significant that the mayor's taken action, that our council is taking action with this appointment, and our offices are doing individual and collective things. My office, for example, using some discretionary money, we identified $1 million. It's going to be split between Caressa and Chirla. Again, providing legal representation, information on rights, and citizenship classes, as you suggested, so that we can create an atmosphere where people don't need to be worried about being deported when they're here legally. And we have to do more than that. I appreciated your comments, though, about an opportunity to raise the bar. Raise the bar. You know, don't just sit back and take it, but be positive, be affirmative, be proactive in ways that we haven't before. And again, I think that's why it's significant that we have some of your caliber on the team who can help us make those connections in ways that we haven't. The idea of expanding litigation certainly is an important component. But I really like the service, providing services, providing information, educating, informing, and inspiring folks. And certainly that's part of our program with Chirla, with Caressa, making sure that people understand their rights, that they understand what they can and can't do. But just as important, as you suggested, we need to be informing businesses. We need to be forming community organizations. We know it's not because it affects everybody. And so I'm just happy that we are at this point, as I said before. I think we all have a unique role to play. Our offices, as I said, as we coordinate the efforts with these two nonprofits in the district over the next year, certainly our focus is the 9th District, but it's going to include more than just people who live in the 9th District. Certainly, as I said, the focus is individuals from Latin America, but it's not only going to serve those. And so if you're from Africa, from the African diaspora, or from Asia, again, people are going to be eligible, and we want to make sure that they receive the information and services available. We are in a crossroads, and I think the actions that we take at the local level will help to point the direction for what we should be doing at the national level. And so I'm proud to step up to the plate, glad to have colleagues who are unafraid as well, and look forward to working with you, Mr. Shea, as we develop the kind of strategy and resources that can really make a difference and save families and save individuals who are in danger of being removed from this country. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Shea. Peter, what is it that you need for us? What should we be doing to prepare for your needs?
I think, number one, I think I need to think about that a bit more and get back to you. But off the top of my head, I think getting it through the city council as promptly as possible would be super exciting. I think facilitating a initial conversation with the city attorney, and I think at least if we're really serious, and I certainly get the impression you and your colleagues are very serious, I think if we could actually meet with the city attorney, and then then maybe he would assign somebody to sort of work or help with this project. But I think developing that relationship, I think, as you pointed out, we're very fortunate to have who we have, and I think he gets it. But I think facilitating an opening discussion there, I think having the city council facilitate an opening discussion with the mayor's office, so that they're sort of on board and they have inputs, and they obviously bring a wealth of knowledge and experience as well. I think thinking about perhaps a few weeks down the road, so we get our act a bit more together, but I think thinking about facilitating conversation with the county to see if I know the county's trying to figure out what to do, as is the state of California. Of course, Senator De Leon has introduced, as part of the Senate, a SB 54, which would place restrictions primarily on local police sort of cooperation. But I think what we have discussed today, and what you and I have discussed, and Gil and I have discussed, is really far more comprehensive than just defending the folks who got caught up in the law enforcement system. The truth is, 97 out of 100 people are not caught up in that law enforcement system. So I think as we get our act together, thinking about how to have greater dialogue with the county and then ultimately with the state of California, I think those are some of the most immediate things that would come to my mind.
Okay, well, I think that I'll be working with the chairman, and we'll try to put together, Mr. Chair, our meetings with our city people. We'll start there.
Perfect.
I'll also talk with Mr. Cedillo's staff and mine about when we calendar this for the full council to take a vote, and we'll do that probably when we come back from recess, which is a short period from now. And I just want to take a moment as I end my comments for today and highlight, because you heard Mr. Roos say it, you heard Mr. Price say it, we have to highlight the civil rights component of what we're trying to do here, because they are all connected together. To me, and it seems so obvious, when you do have an individual that wins an election, you win and you call voter fraud, okay? So basically, that's not a directed attack at individuals who are not from this country. That is an attack on individuals who have been fighting and struggling for their civil rights way before, from slavery.
Right.
And so that's why it's important that we amend the name so that it incorporate that. And we also have to educate people to let them know that this is not just a surgical attack. It is a subtle attack on us all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me say, Peter, that I look forward to this next chapter, and seems like a lifelong engagement on this front. Colleagues, I want to move that we embrace and adopt Peter Shea as the immigrant advocate. I want to move that we change the name of the committee to the Immigration and Civil Rights Committee, that we brought in that title. I say this to you, Mr. President, I appreciate your leadership. This matter is a national matter, but it's also very personal and very local. The Romulo family, he was seized in my district 2 blocks from my office. That family is a model family of what the experience of immigrants should be and is in this country, and we must do all that we can. We start there, defend him, protect his rights, and build on that as the basis and foundation to make sure that every person who lives in this city, in my district and in this city, is treated with the modicum of dignity and respect that is intended for them. As the President said, this is a matter of human rights. We're all part of the human race. And so, colleagues, I ask that we move that agenda item as a motion to accept Peter Shea as the advocate of the new Immigration and Civil Rights Committee. Second, Mr. Price. Thank you, Mr. Rue. That, I believe, is the order of the day. Mr.
Chair, it should be said that we are so fortunate on the council to have you lead this effort. Your dogged determination has produced victory after victory after victory for working people, not only in the city of LA, but in the state of California. So I believe that it is important that you're here and that you will, I have no doubts that you will lead this committee in the direction that it needs to go. So I thank you for accepting this assignment, and I thank you for your leadership.
Very kind and generous of you, Mr. President. Yes, sir.
There's one more amendment on the table, is to change the working title
Yes.
to the Immigration and Civil Rights Advocate. And you so move?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, Mr. Chair, are we approving the recommendations in the April 10th CLA report too, which is there a couple formal steps to secure Mr. Shai's appointment?
Yes, correct.
Very good.
Yes, of course. I believe that is it. Motion received, seconded, adopted. That addresses all the matters of this committee for today. I thank you and bid everybody a good day. Welcome, Mr. Peter Shea.
Thank you very much.
Okay.